Have you ever known anyone who had a memory that was so good they couldn't tell a story? That little details would creep in and frustrate any attempt they made to tell the story. That was Jim Blane. Jim Blane was about 80 years old. He drank whiskey. He lived in a cabin in mining country. And I was told, you must hear his story about his grandfather's old ram. But he must be sufficiently drunk to tell the story. He couldn't be sober, and he couldn't be too drunk because he'd fall asleep. Well, I waited. I was never in my life so desperate to see somebody moderately drunk as I was Jim Blane. Finally, one night, a man came to my cabin and he said, "Come quick, Jim Blane is about to speak." So I ran to Blane's cabin and I ran in the room, and there were men sitting all around on whiskey barrels, cigar boxes, all waiting. And when I walked in, somebody told me to be quiet. And I looked in the middle of the room, and there was Jim Blane. And he had his hand up to let everybody know to be quiet because he was going to speak. And this is the story that Jim Blane told. I reckon times like that will never come again. My grandfather's old ram was the bulliest old ram you ever seen. He bought him from a man out of Siskiyou County. And he took him out, he put him in the medder. And then he went out the next day to have a look at him. Now my grandfather was standing here. And the ram was over here about 20 yards away, standing on a slope. Now, Smith of Calaveras was standing not just there, a little bit farther away. Smith of Calaveras was right there, and the ram was there. Now, my grandfather accidentally dropped a 10-cent piece in the tall grass, and he was bending over trying to reach it. And he wasn't paying attention, but the ram was. Now, the ram was very interested in what my grandfather was doing. And when my grandfather bent over, you see, the ram had an eye full of mischief, and he took it as an invitation. And my grandfather was still bending over. He's trying to get the dime. Now, Smith of Calaveras, no, it weren't Smith of Calaveras. It was Smith of Tulare County. I just remember them Smiths. Smith of Tulare County was standing right there. And my grandfather was here, and he was, I told you before, he was bent over trying to get the dime. And the old ram was taking notice. And he had an eye full of mischief, and here come the ram, 30 miles an hour, and my grandfather was bending over, you see. And Smith, no, it weren't Smith of Tulare County. It was Smith of Sacramento. Smith of Sacramento. Why, Smith of Tulare County was a nobody. Now, Smith of Sacramento, why, the Smiths of Sacramento come from the best blood in the country. Anybody will tell you that. Why, one of them married a Whitaker. What do you say to that? That's what I thought. Now, one of them married Mariah Whitaker. Now, there was a girl. Now, Mariah Whitaker had a glass eye. And Mariah Whitaker used to lend that eye to her friend, Flora Ann Baxter, who didn't have a glass eye to receive company in. Now, the problem was that the eye was a number 7. And Flora Ann Baxter was excavated for a number 14. So the eye didn't fit. Now Flora Ann would wear that eye. It was blue on the outside, the part you were supposed to see, but it was that dingy yellowy color on the inside that you weren't supposed to see. Now Flora Ann would go to church and she'd start bobbing her head when she was talking, and that eye would start to flip over in her head. And it didn't bother the grown-ups, but it almost always made the children cry. It flipped so fast you couldn't tell what expression she had on her face. And now the Baxters, one of the Baxters married a Hagedorn. Now I know you've heard of the Hagedorns. Great Eastern Maryland shore blood. Why, they're one of the best families in the country, them Hagedorns. Like, take Sally Hagedorn. Now Sally Hagedorn got married, and her husband were going to go spread the good news out in one of them islands out in the middle of the ocean somewhere. And they had her. They had him too. Now that was not normal. Normally they only ate the family and not the rest of the people. Now, they said they were sorry. They said it shouldn't have happened. They said it right up front to the family. They said it shouldn't have happened, and we're sorry. They said it was an accident. Accident. Well, that's just foolishness. There's nothing that happens that weren't meant to happen by a higher power. Providence don't shoot no blanks, boys. Now, accidents always happen for a noble and mysterious purpose, and we don't always understand. Now, you look at accidents. You look at my Uncle Lem, then you tell me about accidents. Why, you just look at my Uncle Lem. Now, my Uncle Lem was downtown one day, and he had his dog with him, and he was leaning up against the scaffolding. He was sick or tired or drunk, and he was leaning against the scaffolding, and 3 stories up, there was an Irishman laying hard in a building, and his foot slipped, and he came crashing down 3 stories, landed on top of a stranger, killed him on the spot. He was ready for the coroner in 2 minutes. Now, people said it was an accident. There weren't no accident about it. It had a secret meaning. Why, the purpose was to save the Irishman. People said, save the Irishman? People said, why didn't the Irishman fall on the dog? Why weren't the dog appointed? Well, for a very good reason. The dog would have seen him a-coming. Why, you can't rely on a dog to carry out providence. A dog, what was that dog's name? Jasper. The dog's name was Jasper. And he weren't no mongrel, he was a syndicate. A syndicate is a dog that's made up of all the best parts of dogs. He weren't no mongrel. And they got him from the Wheelers. Now, I know you heard about the Wheelers. Good family. Millington Wheeler. Now, Millington Wheeler one day was at his job in the carpet factory. And he was so happy, so satisfied with life, not paying attention. And the machine snapped at him and grabbed him and pulled him all the way through the factory. why you couldn't even see him. He was traveling so fast. All you could do was hear him whiz as he went by. Well, you can't have that happen and go home like nothing happened that day at work. So that day, Wheeler got wove up into 29 yards of the best 3-ply carpeting made. His wife was sorry. She was uncommon sorry about what happened. And she couldn't stand the thought of rolling him up. So she tried to buy a cave for him. But there weren't no caves for sale. So she bought the whole piece. She took it home, and she decided to box it in a beautiful box. It was the best idea. It was economical, too. And she stood him up in the cemetery, and you could see him for a mile away. And on the box, it said, "To the memory of the best 29 yards of 3-ply carpeting ever made, Millington G. Wheeler. Go ye and do likewise." Wheeler. Well, at that point, Jim Blane always went to sleep. And we never did find out what happened to his grandfather's old ram.